And we're back.
Hello again.
A little early this week.
Early.
Yeah.
With episode 55, a special edition where we're going to talk about the BBC production of Dracula.
Which you can watch on Netflix.
Some micro miniseries.
I don't know if it's micro mini at 4.5 hours.
Well, three episodes.
Okay.
Which are almost self-contained movies, almost. I mean, they aren't really, but...
You should watch
almost
1 and 2 before 3. But
yes, definitely watch them in order.
It wouldn't hurt to watch each one in a separate night.
But we watched them all in one night.
Super binge.
One glorious binge, yeah.
Okay, so we're going to go through the whole synopsis, spoilers included.
Big spoilers. So if you haven't seen this...
But first, we'll get to the main point. Did you like it?
I did.
I have read a whole bunch of really scathing, horrible reviews for this.
A whole lot of hate on this, and I was really entertained.
I liked it too.
Yeah.
I think the ending was very weak.
It wasn't
I had
perfect.
problems with the third episode, but overall I think it was very worthwhile. I did like it.
Yeah. It was not perfect, but...
There are some plot holes, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, but it was good. It was all right.
Yeah.
I liked it.
Yeah.
I do not regret the 4.5 hours.
Not at all, no.
Okay, so now getting into it.
Mm-hmm. Part 1.
Directed by Jonny Campbell, Paul McGuigan, Damon Thomas. Written by Mark Gatiss, Stephen Moffat, two guys who worked heavily on Doctor Who and Sherlock. Mm-hmm. And of course, Bram Stoker had some involvement.
Based on the story by Bram Stoker.
And it stars Claes Bang. That's a name. Claes Bang.
Claes Bang.
His brother Claes Boom.
Mm-hmm.
Dolly Wells and Corrina Wilson. Runtime altogether is 4 hours and 30 minutes. It's 3 parts of a little over an hour and a half each.
Now, it took me a little bit to warm to him as Dracula, but I did quickly. But I thought Dolly Wells really knocked it out of the park.
She was very good, and the guy who played Harker, I thought was really good also.
Yes, very much.
Dracula himself, he was all right. I liked him okay. I've seen better, I've seen worse, but he was decent. I liked him okay.
Yeah, middle of the road, not my favorite, not my least
And you're right,
favorite.
it took a little getting used to in the beginning.
But once I did, I was fine with it.
Yeah.
So,
all
where
right.
does it begin?
You really want to go there?
Yeah.
Hold on.
Lots of spoilers coming.
3 parts. Part 1 is called The Rules of the Beast. This miniseries begins in Hungary, 1897. Mr. Harker is locked up in a convent, and he looks carefully, considering eating a fly, as 2 nuns enter.
Yeah, he's watching it around. And I expected him to.
Yeah. Sister Agatha, a nun, comes to visit, and she's read his account of his recent visit to Transylvania. The nun asks why did he stop fleeing Dracula if he's as bad as Harker claims. Well, the nuns watch as a fly crawls inside Harker's eye, right up under the eyelid.
Mm-hmm. And he's like, what, something wrong?
He didn't even notice.
Yeah.
He's bald, hairless, wrinkled, and sort of looks like a burn victim.
Yeah, he's looking bad.
Yeah,
bad shape.
very bad.
Uh-huh.
The nun is here to interview Harker, and she has very detailed questions, starting off if he had sexual relations with Count Dracula. And then the credits roll.
And it's, what? Did I, what? Yeah.
Inconceivable.
Mm-hmm. Well, and throughout it, Dracula does refer to him as one of his brides. Did you notice that?
I did not notice that.
Yeah, everybody he changes, he refers to as his brides, male or female. Yeah.
Hey, he's flexible. 500 years old, you would be too.
Well, I don't know about actual sex, but yeah, that's how he refers to him. Yeah.
Well, the way that it's described in the show, drinking their blood would be probably more intimate than sex, because you get their memories too.
Yeah.
But we get to that in a minute.
But we get ahead of ourselves.
We flash back to Transylvania. Harker has hair and looks normal now. The carriage driver won't take Harker any closer to the castle, and Dracula's creepy driver picks him up and takes him to the castle, where he meets Old Man Dracula.
So there's some real similarities to the classic story.
Yeah, if you've watched other Dracula shows, this one is going to be probably the most familiar to you. This part 1. Mm-hmm. Dracula is buying Carfax Abbey, and Harker works for the real estate lawyers. The local people, Dracula says, are without flavor. So he wants to move to England and get some class and refinement.
And he throws in so many comments like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of snarky.
Yeah,
he's a snarky Dracula.
Mm-hmm.
Dracula says to Harker, "I will absorb you to become more British. And we take that in the beginning to mean he's going to pay attention to how he speaks and how he acts, and he's going to learn to become more civilized.
Because his English is kind of crude.
Yeah.
Is rough.
He sounds very Romanian.
Heavily accented.
But that's not what he means.
No, he means literally.
So he describes his own castle and the architect who made it as the prison without locks, as it's so hard to navigate. The evening goes pretty much according to most other versions of the story that you've seen, and eventually he sees a woman in the room above his, but can't find the woman.
And an interesting side note, the exteriors of the castle, it's a real place in Slovakia, and it was the same exterior shots they used for Nosferatu, 1922.
Castle's been there a while.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The next evening, Dracula looks a little bit younger, and his English has improved significantly. Harker is determined to find out who else is in the castle, but Dracula explains that no one is living here. As the days pass, Harker gets weaker and his fingernails and hair start to fall out.
And Dracula keeps looking more vigorous.
Better and better each day.
Wonder what's happening there.
Each day, he searches deeper and deeper into the tunnels of the castle. And at one point, Harker opens a bunch of boxes containing dead people who don't like being disturbed.
Undead.
Yeah.
They're not quite vampires, but they're not dead. They just stay that way forever.
Yeah. He passes out after finding Dracula in a crypt as well. Dracula is soon young again, and he instructs Harker to write 3 letters to Mina, Harker's fiancée. One that he's about ready to leave, one that says he's on the road, and one says that he's almost home. Dracula says that this is so no one will come looking for Harker in Transylvania.
And as he's telling the story, they keep flashing back to the 1897, where he's at the nunnery.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's telling the story to the nuns, and then we're seeing it as he's...
So we know Harker survives poorly, but he does get away. We know this much
somehow,
already.
Yeah.
Harker is too weak to argue or fight back by this time, so he writes the letters. And he eventually runs into the girl that he saw in the window, and when she turns out to be a vampire, he finds out the cross doesn't really work.
Well, and she wasn't really a full vampire. She was... Dracula said that
this is tricky.
They don't really... Yeah.
According to Dracula, he's the only vampire.
And he
that's not really
drains
true.
People, and they become undead, but very few successfully become vampires, is what he said. Very, very few make the transition. Most of them become this kind of Twilight undead, where they just...
I thought he meant most people just die, but a few of them become the undead. No one has ever come out quite like him.
Yeah, nobody,
Yeah,
he's the only one who
and we see other undead things later on.
Yeah, you're right.
She looks pretty good upstairs, though. She looks human and clean and, not monstrous.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe she's one of the better ones.
Yeah.
But Dracula ends up staking her just to see what will happen. I killed a vampire once just to watch her die.
Mm-hmm.
Dracula takes Harker up to the highest point of the castle and twists his head around. He's completely dead, not breathing, and with no heartbeat. He's undead, but not quite yet a vampire.
Well, and before that, too, something about a lot of little micro twists in this.
Yeah.
Because
the basic story is the same, but there's a lot of little things.
Before then, Sister Agatha points out, and I think Jonathan kind of realizes that, you don't have a pulse, and you breathe once in a while out of habit, but then you realize, oh, he's an undead.
Yeah.
And then shortly after, you see Dracula kill him. And
well, I mean, from the very first scene, I kind of figured, he's a vampire because you don't see him in the sun.
Well, he was.
I kind of thought
he was daylight.
But he wasn't exactly.
No, just
not
a
fully.
tweener.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. But a lot of little micro twists in it where you don't see, and even in just, like, oh, that didn't see that.
Yeah, if you did a straight-up adaptation of the book, everybody would know exactly what was going to happen, and it'd be kind of boring.
Delightful little surprises.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Harker jumps off the roof of the castle and escapes by shining reflected sunlight off his silver cross, which burns Dracula. Yeah, and he falls a long way.
Mm-hmm.
Sister Agatha explains that the other nun, who has sat there through the whole thing, listening to the whole story, is really Mina in disguise.
Yeah, Jonathan can't remember what Mina looks like. That was mentioned as he was getting the life sucked out of him. He couldn't remember Mina, and she was there, and she ain't giving up on him.
And the convent suddenly is under attack by bats. Harker hands Mina a stake, and we see his fangs.
Yeah,
he's turning.
Well, she cut herself.
She cut herself, and at the sight of the blood, he
starts
vamps
losing
out a
it.
little bit.
Yeah.
And he ends up staking himself. Agatha and the other nuns face down Dracula outside. This is probably the best scene of the film.
Yeah, that was awesome.
She opens.
He can't come in without being invited.
Yeah, so he's standing there. She opens up the gate, and she's like, nah, nah.
Yeah, she really
can't come in.
Oh, that was tense though too.
And there's like 20 nuns behind her. If any one of them says, "Come on in," they're done.
Uh-huh.
Will they? Or
Will
won't
they?
they?
Well,
and then you got the Mother Superior, who's kind of fat and looks like she would give in.
And she kind of wasn't in the loop too. She's Sister Agatha, what have you done? What are you doing? And,
you just know she's going to say, "Oh, come on in. We'll straighten you out."
That's kind of what we expected.
But that's not what happens.
Because a lot of unexpected happens.
Yeah. And we soon learn that Sister Agatha is really Agatha Van Helsing from Holland. Dracula then wakes up Harker upstairs. His body's laying on the floor. He's not really dead. Turns out vampires can't do suicide. It doesn't work. But he's got the stake in his heart. And he's all bloody and...
Yeah.
It went in, it just didn't kill him.
Wake up and invite me in, eh?
And he does, which goes very badly for the nuns. Agatha and Mina hole up in a room and hope to wait it out till morning.
And how does that go, I wonder? See, we didn't spoil everything.
Yeah, we did. That was pretty much the entire everything.
No, there's all kinds of points that we didn't spoil.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So if you still want to watch it, yeah. And
that's part one, which I think we'll probably both agree is the best.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. Again, that's also the closest to the book and closest to the older movies that we've already seen. It starts diverging a little bit in part two. Mm-hmm. But that's not necessarily bad. Part two was really good, too.
Yeah. Well, part two is the voyage to America.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, to England.
Yeah. Part two is called Blood Vessel, because they're on a ship through all of it, really.
Yep.
We see Dracula and Agatha sitting in a room talking about books and chess.
And this makes you wonder,
where
Agatha survived, and where are they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He explains about his voyage to England aboard the ship Demeter. So this is obviously in the future, after he goes to England, apparently. Mm-hmm. Dracula begins to tell her the tale, and credits roll.
And they play chess and, playing a game as they discuss it and debate it. So, flashing back to the Demeter.
Yeah, before the Demeter, actually. The captain is having nightmares about dead crewmen. Dr. Sharma examines a coffin wherein someone was buried alive. As they look at the coffin, they watch the body sit up.
So
this happened some vaguely point in the past.
He knows about the undead and the phenomena of the undead.
Yeah, at first I'm like, what's going on here? And it turns out it gets explained later that, this happened on its own. He just knows about undead.
Yeah, and then the ship is gearing up to leave. And,
yeah. And we flash forwards as we go aboard the Demeter, which is unloading 7 passengers, some new crew, and a bunch of mysterious boxes of dirt.
It's a combination passenger ship and cargo ship.
Yeah, they explain that normally they don't carry this many passengers, but boy, that was a fancy dining room for a cargo ship.
Well, and they did have 10 rooms, so they could have up to 10 families or couples. So
they're not usually this busy, but they're doing it.
Nice dining room. Yeah, that was very slick. Yeah.
Okay, so it's 4 weeks to get to England, and Dracula says he's not going to sleep in a box, so he just joins up with the other passengers and takes a room.
Yeah, and blends in as a person.
Yeah, and he conjures up a fog to keep the ship in out of the sunlight the whole time.
Yeah, that was neat.
He's got it looks like he's vaping there, and it's just enough to surround the entire ship.
Yeah, and then it follows along.
And he befriends an old countess who speaks German. And Dracula says, "Well, my German is a little rusty. Please excuse me." And then he goes outside, eats a Bavarian man, and comes back inside, and he speaks perfect German.
Yeah, and this is where it becomes more clear that he takes on
it's not just food.
A little bit. Well, and two, the guy had a stammer. Mm-hmm. And the first couple of times Dracula talks, he's got the stammer too.
Yeah, he absorbs a little bit of the personality and all of their memories and their knowledge.
Language and stuff like that,
So it's more than just blood.
Yeah.
And he says many times throughout this, blood is life.
And he's particular, and he tries to be particular about who he harvests.
Yeah.
Because he knows that he takes on their qualities.
He says if he went out and just ate every poor person he found, what would he say? He'd just be...
Well, and he said that's a reason...
Low-class people are not good.
And that's a reason he said that... people he's tried to change don't make it because they just indiscriminately.
Oh yeah. They'll just eat anything.
They'll eat the cattle, Or
you are what you eat.
Yeah, or who you eat, or whatever. Yeah, he goes for quality rather than quantity.
Yeah. Okay, so anyway, he conjures up a fog to hide the sunlight, befriends the old German woman, and she tells Dracula a story about this dashing young man she met many years ago. And it turns out she's met Dracula before.
Yeah, like, how are you doing that?
And you don't know whether it's going to be a partnership or what, but he immediately kills her.
Yeah.
Yep. So nothing going on there.
Yeah.
There's a mysterious passenger in room 9 that no one is allowed to see. Lord Ruthven's wife leaves her cabin that night and runs into Dracula. Doomed.
Yep. Saw that on her forehead. Yeah.
Dracula insists they search cabin 9 for the murderer, but the captain refuses to allow anyone else inside. Who's in there?
9?
Dracula doesn't know who's in 9? That could be interesting.
Yeah, he's just playing with them, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it comes up at dinner that most of the guests were invited, recommended by, or otherwise had some connection with Mr. Belur, which turns out to be a translation of the name Dracula.
Oh, I think
it's a lot wittier than Alucard.
Alucard would have been, in that one. Yeah.
They all have connection to this man one way or another, and he's invited select people to be his food for the voyage.
He's pulled the strings on this whole
thing.
They've
got the scientist who knows about the undead, and they've got
the old lady that he
that he knew, the young lord and his wife. He liked her and had to take the husband as well.
Yeah.
Basically, he picked all these people, so when he drinks them, he'll get their experiences. It's more than just the food.
Yeah, their knowledge and
Before long, most of the crew abandon ship and they take one of the lifeboats with them. We then flash back to the previous episode, right at the end. Dracula let Mina go, but kept Agatha as a prisoner. It turns out that she's the person in room number 9.
And this whole chess game is going on in their heads. Every time he drinks from her, it's like a
meeting of the minds.
It's like a mind link. They go to a place together in their minds, and and this is what was
a little bit of a psychic connection.
And she realizes,
I'm the one in room 9.
I'm in room 9. Yeah.
Yeah, back on the ship, Dracula turns in Agatha as the murderer. She did it. She's a vampire. And she admits that she's a vampire, and they get her strung up on the yardarm, ready to hang her. She spits blood in Dracula's face, bites her lip, and spits it out.
Gets him to freak out in front of everybody.
He does not control himself well when there's blood in the room. Yeah. So he exposes himself to the others. Agatha then goes up to the captain and says, I relieve you of command. And he's like, all right.
Yeah, that was so weird. What? Just out of the blue. Like, okay, you can.
Because some random nun is going to take over the captain's position on the ship. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't even know she's really a nun. She's,
taking her word for it.
2 minutes ago, they thought she was a murderous vampire.
Yeah.
Yeah, she takes command of the ship, even though the captain's perfectly healthy, standing right there. And then she starts a search for Dracula, who runs away. And the captain tells her, you don't seem like a nun.
And she really doesn't, the way she talks. And, she's very worldly and knowledgeable and kind of crude. And,
not very nunny.
Yeah.
Well, they dump all the boxes of soil overboard except for one, which they decide to use as a trap.
Yeah, they think they can, if he's got to sleep and heal himself.
Dracula has to sleep in his native soil. That's a rule.
Mm-hmm.
So Ruthven, Lord Ruthven, partners up with Dracula and then turns against Dr. Sharma, but Dr. Sharma's daughter drinks poison rather than be held a prisoner. It seems like a bit of an overreaction.
She knew what was coming if she didn't.
Ruthven then shoots Sharma, who Dracula wanted to drink for his intelligence. He wanted to learn what the doctor knew.
And, apparently that's a thing where Dracula can't do them as they're dying or after they're dead.
Dracula does not like drinking dead people.
It doesn't work. Yeah.
Eventually, there's another standoff, and more people die, but this time it results in Dracula being set on fire and jumping overboard. We see Agatha pull off her fingernail, just as Harker did in the previous episode. Yep, she really is infected as well.
Well, he's been biting on her.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So she tells the captain to take a lifeboat, and she's going to stay behind and blow the ship up.
Because she's a nun, and she knows how to blow ships up.
Every nun I've ever met knew how to make gunpowder.
Well,
they've got the ingredients.
They've got the ingredients, the sulfur and the saltpeter, and everything is in the
cargo. They saw that Star
Trek
episode.
Got the separate ingredients, and I know how to make a big bomb.
Well, the lifeboat sails off, and in walks the captain, explaining that he's decided he's going down with the ship. Except it's really Dracula in disguise.
No, that wasn't. That was really the captain.
No, that wasn't really the captain.
Yeah, that was. Yeah. He really came back. That was really the captain.
It was?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay, I blanked.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I know the captain was there on the floor with his throat torn out a minute or two later. Okay.
Yes. Oh, that just happened right after.
Right. But Dracula can
initial...
take on other people's appearances.
Well, sort of.
Sort of.
Yeah. We'll let you watch to see for
Yeah,
yourself
that-
how
that's
he
a little
does that.
tricky.
Yeah, that's a little and gross.
Okay, so the real captain, of one way or another, is laying on the floor with a bite in his neck, but he's not really dead yet. We finally learn why Dracula explains why vampires fear the cross, and it makes a lot of sense in the context of the series.
Although Agatha doesn't buy it.
She thinks he's lying about it.
Yeah.
The captain then blows up the ship. Dracula hides out in a box of soil as it sinks to the bottom of the ocean. Time passes. Dracula breaks out of the box and walks to shore. Why he couldn't swim, I don't know, but hey, he walks.
Never learned how to swim.
All right.
Yeah, and he's all waterlogged and sinky, so he just walks.
It has been established that he doesn't breathe.
Yeah, clearly.
So helicopters appear with spotlights, and Agatha approaches, welcoming him to England with police cars, spotlights, modern guns, and
clearly
cameras. Lots
much
of time
has passed. He's been down there a long time.
Why?
Yeah.
We don't know at this point. And that's the end of part 2.
See, and I was thinking about the soil thing. Oh, hello. He doesn't have to sleep on his own soil.
Apparently not.
He heals when he's on his soil. That was the trick.
Oh, so by staying on the box,
after he was roasted, he had to sleep on the soil to regenerate, and the soil kept him alive all those years, continuously under the water.
Okay.
Later, he loses all his dirt, but he's not injured or banged up or anything. If he was, severely injured, he'd be screwed.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That's not explained in the show.
It's
but
not.
You're right, that
Well,
makes
I was
sense.
thinking about that, and it's hinted at and kind of, sort of explained. Mm-hmm. They kind of beat around, but yeah, that's the explanation. Because then when he comes to shore, he's got no dirt, and what's he going to do? He can't sleep in his own soil.
Yeah.
Well, he doesn't have to, unless he's
well. He
to
bought
heal.
Carfax Abbey legally. He's got the property. Is that his soil now? I mean, why carry all the dirt
Native
with him?
soil. Yeah.
I guess technicalities and lawyerisms.
Yeah. Nuances.
Okay, which brings us to part 3, called The Dark Compass.
Mm-hmm.
Things are different now.
Yeah.
The first episode was really, really good.
Years later.
The second episode was also really good. This one is quite different. Each of the 3 episodes were directed by somebody different, and this guy, it shows in this one. Mm-hmm. Okay, right away, we see what happened between Agatha, and Dracula at the end of episode 1. Credits roll. Mm-hmm. Now we jump to 123 years later, which we knew that from the earlier. Mm-hmm. A woman, Kathleen, wakes up and finds Dracula in her house. He's watching the sunset on TV. And
he's practically moved to tears because
it's
been
beautiful.
So long since he's been able to see the sun. That was kind of funny.
Yeah, he's just killed the woman's husband, Bob, and tied up his undead body in the refrigerator. He downloaded he calls it downloading now, because he's learned from Bob all this newfangled technology.
That's what he tells her, you'd think of it as downloading.
Yeah. This word hadn't come up before, but now he's in modern times and he knows the words.
Yeah.
So he has some idea about modern things now because he ate Bob.
And you wonder, too, they were on the beach. Because the previous episode, how it ended, they were on the beach. They had weapons drawn on him.
We don't know yet.
Helicopters, how to get away.
Yeah.
We
find out. Yeah. We flash back to the end of episode 2. We see Dracula at the beach with the helicopters and the snipers. He laughs to hear how long it's been. The woman standing there isn't really Agatha, but her descendant, Zoe Helsing. She's lost the van somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Agatha was her great-great-aunt.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Dracula turns into bats and escapes, leaving the others behind. Hard to shoot at bats.
And I thought this was they were a little bit unprepared. I mean, they had weaponry, modern weaponry.
They obviously were waiting for it.
Heavy guns, helicopters and everything, but...
No cage, nothing to take him
no
in.
crosses visible, no...
This was pre-planned. They knew he was coming. Why were they not better prepared?
Yeah, that seemed like a weak point.
Yeah.
They didn't have any way of holding him or any... Yeah. They're going to ask him to come along?
So he escapes.
And he doesn't. He doesn't come along with
No, he does not.
Yeah.
He turns into bats and escapes, which is how he wound up at Kathleen's house. Mm-hmm. So back at Kathleen's house, he finds a coffin full of soil upstairs with a cell phone inside. Zoe Helsing calls him and tells him to get in the box.
Yeah, they've tracked him. They've been following him.
Tricks her and traps her in the kitchen and bites her in the neck. He then starts vomiting up all her blood because there's something not quite right there. She's poisoned it somehow.
Mm-hmm. And we find out later what that's about. Yeah.
He kind of passes out from the bad blood, and they put him in the box, and now he's their prisoner.
Now he's a prisoner. Now they've got him.
They take him to some kind of underground facility.
Torchwood.
First thing I thought.
It really was reminiscent of that.
Stephen Moffat and what's his name, the other guy, both worked on many episodes of Doctor Who and Doctor Hood, yeah. Doctor Who and Torchwood, and clearly that has leaked over.
It was very reminiscent of a Torchwood.
Yeah. The very first episode, Mina is writing a letter, and she's talking about the barmaid at the bar down the street, which is a reference to Clara from Doctor Who. Mm-hmm. Later on, somebody mentions they know a detective back in England that can help with a case. They're talking about Sherlock.
Yep.
And, of course, the writers worked on both Who and Sherlock, and it's a small world.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Jack Seward meets Lucy and Quincy, name dropping, at the dance club. He keeps getting phone calls from Jonathan Harker, who we know is long dead.
See, and this is where its weakest point was to me. There was these
young people,
clubbing and partying and
much too much time with
social media and way too much time on that. And I didn't care for these people at first. It took me a long time to warm up to Lucy, and
the first episode mostly centered around Harker and the nun, with Dracula there as a villain. The second movie mostly focused around Dracula himself. The third movie seemed to mostly focus on these useless young people.
And they did come across as useless.
That was the weak point.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next morning he heads to the Jonathan Harker Foundation, which is where they took Dracula. It's basically Torchwood, but just for studying Dracula.
Well, vampires. They hoped that, or thought that he probably survived and they would find him again someday. And for, Mina founded it, actually.
Yeah, Mina got rich and started this whole thing.
And started this thing to watch vampires and watch for him. And
which, if you follow Doctor Who, you know where Torchwood started out with, and it's a very similar story.
100 years ago, they started this thing.
Torchwood was started because of a werewolf incident, if you remember back.
Yeah, Queen Victoria started it, didn't she?
Yeah, exactly. You've seen that one too. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so anyway, they show a bunch of people it's got a room full of people in an auditorium watching a video of divers digging up Dracula's box at the bottom of the ocean and opening it up.
Well, she's bringing the staff up to date. Everybody that works at the Institute, bringing them up to date on how Dracula got there, how they found him, and what happened and everything. So we get to see it too.
Staff meeting.
What happened, how did he get from the box, waking up to, well, carry on.
So she's checking out Dracula, who's dead at the bottom of the ocean, and she's sticking her feet in. I don't know if she's counting his teeth or what.
That's what she's narrating. She's saying, look how well preserved the body is, and it's like sticking your fingers in a shark's mouth.
Yeah, and of course he bites her finger off.
He wasn't quite as dead as they thought. He was comatose. He was in a coma state, but he instinctively bit and got some blood out of her thumb.
The finger and the blood in the finger gave him the strength to get to shore.
Well, and she says, and as you can see, and she holds up her bandaged thumb missing.
It's never clear why he went to sleep for all those years, and it's not really.
Stunned from the explosion, and I don't know.
He seemed fine when he jumped when the ship exploded. He wasn't actually directly in the blast. He jumped down, and hopped in his box, and went down into the water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I don't know.
Don't know. Yeah.
And of course, the box was nailed shut. Who nailed the box shut from the outside?
Are you sure it was, or was
I'm
it
very
just latched?
No,
okay.
You could see the divers with the crowbar making the box open up.
Okay, I thought it was just latched somehow and shut from the inside or something.
It looked like shipping containers nailed shut.
Well, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a little unclear on that.
Okay, so they put Dracula in prison. And Dracula is not thrilled with this prison cell. He's like, it's a toilet. Yeah. I'm a vampire. Why have you given me a toilet?
Yeah, there's a chemical toilet there. It's all glass, plexiglass, but
it's a cell.
So, he's pointing out but there's a sun opening.
It's a neat room
overhead, where they can.
It's a triangular cell that the whole cell rotates, and the sun can shine in certain places.
Yeah, so they say behave or we'll open the whole roof. So yeah.
So Zoe goes in and tries to take Dracula's blood, but she can't break his skin. So instead, he cuts his wrist and fills a test tube for her. Dracula immediately realized that Zoe isn't really in charge and wants to know who's funding the Institute.
Because there's mercenaries and way more money than they should have. And I think the implication is that it's
Government wouldn't hire mercenaries. They'd have the army or somebody there.
Well, if it's a black ops...
Considering the writers of the story, they'd have UNIT there.
No, they're keeping it a secret, and, it's an under-the-table thing. And
well, we'll come back to this.
They never really say. But that was my take, that the government wanted to militarize it.
I think there was more to it than that.
Maybe.
There's someone in charge, and Dracula wants to know who it is.
But
this plot line
goes
absolutely nowhere.
So it could be a part 4.
It may have been left as a lead into a sequel.
4, 5,
as we
6.
find out who the big bad behind the whole deal is. Mm-hmm. It turns out it's Dr. Frankenstein or something. I mean, we don't know. It could have been something like that. It could be.
They left that open. Yeah.
Also, at the very end, we don't see Dracula die.
No.
They totally could do more.
We don't. He implies that he's,
Spoilers.
He could just be saying
we'll spoil that in a few minutes.
Yeah.
So Dracula figures out that Zoe has cancer, and that's what's wrong with her blood.
Mm-hmm.
Dracula's been Skyping with a lawyer named Renfield using an iPad they put in his cell.
And she's all outraged, like, who gave him the Wi-Fi password? And he says, it's my name. Like, real great security.
But no one thinks to change the password later on.
Yeah, he keeps using the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Renfield turns out to be Count Dracula's lawyer, and he's arrived to protest Dracula's imprisonment.
And
Count Dracula has rights, explains the lawyer.
And he's a descendant of Renfield from way back.
There was no Renfield way back.
Well, we didn't see the Renfield, but he said that Renfield was...
Okay, yeah.
Renfield's, great was representing Dracula.
Dracula has
property,
been
that property exchange that Jonathan Harker was there for.
That
Jonathan Harker worked for Renfield's company.
Yeah.
So all these years...
Don't you think it's strange to have that same client
Dracula
for 200 years?
Retained him.
Yeah,
it's a little, what do you say? A little, not unsettling. It was a very British
something like that.
It was very, horrifying, but he didn't say horrifying.
Renfield is funny throughout, even before he gets crazy.
He's pretty amazing. Yeah.
So Zoe then decides to drink the blood sample, and we're like, ooh, she's going to turn into a vampire now.
No, not really. Yeah.
And meanwhile, then Dracula steals Jack's phone on the way out as he's been released because of the lawyering. The whole imprisonment plot stops abruptly as he's released. Mm-hmm. Okay, we're letting you out now.
Yeah, because he had rights. And the lawyer put it, we can either do this easy and you can let him go, or we can go public with it. It's basically what he threatened him with, and he had the legal right to do it. And which my thought was, why would they let him? Why would they let Renfield go if they were serious about keeping this a secret?
Flip a switch, flood the cell with light, and say, oops, our mistake.
What vampire?
Yeah, you go public.
Well,
then.
No, I think they really wanted him. But let him go, or...
Then they didn't have him anymore.
Yeah, so. Let him go or dust him, but
Okay, so anyway, the phone rings, and it's Lucy who calls, and she ends up having a conversation with Dracula. 3 months then pass. Dracula and Renfield are literally plotting world domination.
Yeah, I don't know if you mentioned that Jack was sweet on Lucy.
I didn't care enough to make a note.
Yeah, but that's why Lucy called, because they're friends.
Yeah.
So she calls Jack's phone. Dracula answers.
Lucy is going to marry Quincy because he's rich. Quincy's going to marry Lucy because she's beautiful. And Jack is in love with Lucy, but nobody cares because he's just a guy.
Yeah, and Lucy's just treats Jack in the friend zone, which is why she calls and Dracula answers, and then they become... Hey, baby. My name is Dracula.
So Dracula is carefully screening people. I mean, they got profiles and stuff to drink and steal their abilities. It's like a superpower almost.
Uh-huh.
We get several long and really boring scenes with Lucy and her narcissistic friends talking about something stupid for an interminable period that sounds like hours.
There was too much of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Dracula and Lucy then go for a walk through the graveyard, and by this time I was starting to hope that Buffy would jump up and surprise us.
Oh, and several months have passed since the imprisonment. Yeah.
Instead, they're listening for people knocking on their coffin lids from inside. And of course we get the brilliant line, "The children of the night, what sweet music they make."
Mm-hmm.
They had to cram that in there somewhere.
They did, yeah.
And there appear to be millions of undead all over the world beating in their coffins.
There's 9 just in this cemetery alone.
And no one but Dracula knows how common this is. He didn't say Dracula killed all the nine of them people. Or Dracula killed the whole cemetery. This sort of happens on its own. more often than not.
I think that was the implication, yeah.
Dracula is the only intelligent, active vampire in the world, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But there's millions of these sort of zombie kind of things in their crypts.
It's the
best kept secret of Undertakers.
Vampire who's successful at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, others are not
And this
so
just
successful.
seems ridiculously impossible.
Yeah,
we saw that Dr. Sharma in the past had a dead person.
Mm-hmm.
How has no one ever found this out before?
Well, and especially...
Eventually they rot.
Yeah, but they're still alive.
For a long time, yeah. It takes a long time to rot.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Jack goes to see Zoe in the hospital.
She's terminal with the cancer.
Yeah, and they don't understand why Dracula keeps coming back for Lucy over and over. He doesn't kill her. He just keeps biting her and coming back and biting her and coming back. What's so special about her?
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, he does kill Lucy, but promises she won't be dead for long. On the other hand, they cremate the body, which is a surprise.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't quite stop her. She wakes up and drains the attendant.
Yeah, busts out of the crematorium half cremated. So she's kind of gory, gross, and icky.
Dracula's blood. Remember, Zoe drank Dracula's blood, but we figured to turn her into a vampire, or a healer, or give her some sort of superpower. No, all it does is give her visions of dead Sister Agatha. That's all it does.
Who they explain, Sister Agatha says, well, it must be something in the DNA has connected us.
Dracula absorbs memories, and he's apparently passed these on to Zoe somehow.
Mm-hmm.
So she has conversations with Agatha.
Yeah.
She knows who's funding the project, and she's not happy about it. Again, we never find out. It goes nowhere.
No.
Zoe is dying, but she decides to leave the hospital anyway. Jack and Zoe go to visit Dracula's house, which is pretty cool. I like his decorator.
Yeah, well, it's an apartment.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Lucy arrives a bit later, and she's a mess, who freaks out when she sees herself in the mirror.
Well, no, it's a selfie. She looks in the mirror. Oh, and that's a weird thing with the mirrors, too. We never talked about that. But
Dracula, it doesn't see nothing. He sees his true appearance, an old,
which is
raggedy,
hideous. He's like 400 years old, yeah.
Picture of Dorian Gray kind
and that's
of
what she looks in the mirror in reflection, and she's kind of narcissistic, and she sees herself as she always was, beautiful and perfect. And
everyone else sees
and Zoe says, well, take a selfie with your phone. And the phone is not fooled, and she sees what she looks like, and then she freaks.
Walking barbecue.
Yeah.
Okay, so she freaks out, and Jack stakes her, and she turns to dust, just like in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Same sound effect, even. Zoe then runs across the table and pulls the curtain down, just like in the 1958 Horror of Dracula movie, exposing Dracula to sunlight, and
he screams and writhes on the floor, and
nothing happens.
And wait, I'm not burning.
Oops.
And she's like, it's 93 million miles away. It's not going to hurt you.
Zoe explains that there are really no rules or limitations to Dracula's power. It's all just ingrained habits that he's picked up from the vampire legends.
Well, and the vampire
Crosses,
legends,
garlic,
because
sunlight,
of all the people
invitations.
that over the centuries, all the people that he's absorbed that gradually, believe these things, and they become more and more reinforced.
Well, that's what his explanation about the cross.
Well, no, that was her explanation too.
All right.
Yeah, it became reinforced more and more over the centuries as he drank more and more people,
but it's not
who believed
true.
These things, and then so he started to believe them as truth, and
the only thing that Dracula really fears is death itself, but he'll end up living forever in shame of this fear, she says. Then Zoe lays down on the floor and dies. Cancer wins. Dracula walks slowly into the sunlight. It doesn't hurt him. It's like, and then he drinks her blood, knowing that it's poison to him. We assume they both die, but we don't actually see it happen. The end. ?
Well, and it kind of ends with them together in his mind place. As he's drinking.
Yeah, maybe she's not quite really dead at the time.
Almost.
So,
but they're having their shared vision together. And
the story is, if you want to take it as they died, you can. If you want to hope for a sequel, you can.
Yeah. And she's like, but this will kill you. And he's like, well, yeah, but...
He wants to prove her wrong at this point.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to hurt. And
All right. Well, part 1 is very moody and dark. This was always the most interesting part of the original story for me, and it was good that a miniseries could take the time to actually cover all the details of Dracula's castle. The vampire baby was a neat idea.
Oh, yeah, that was creepy.
Yeah. Most Dracula films have to focus on the action and the horror and leave a lot of the details out. And they got into a lot of the details. Mm-hmm. The confrontation at the convent gate was very good as well. Probably the tensest part of the whole miniseries. Mm-hmm. And the actor who plays Harker did a really excellent job.
Yeah.
And the nun was good too.
Mm-hmm.
Better here than later. Part 2 introduces a few new things. First, Dracula has the best, most efficient way to learn a new language. He should sell his blood to Rosetta Stone.
No Rosetta Stone for him.
Well, the first part followed the first part of the book very closely with some embellishment. The part of the book dealing with the Demeter was very short, so this section has a lot more made-up stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
the twist at the end, when he goes to the present, is very unexpected.
Yeah, yeah. Lots of twists that surprised me in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Part 3 brings some really good visuals with the various dream sequences, but they don't make up for the boring teenagers and 90210 style angst that were completely out of place here. The let's study Dracula for science angle was really unique and different, but went absolutely nowhere.
Yeah.
The scene with the 9 undead people in a single cemetery really kind of killed it for me. If there are that many undead everywhere, then Dracula isn't really that unique, and it ought to be relatively easy to find an undead person and study them.
It wouldn't be that much of a secret.
Dr. Sharma did it 100 years ago, so why can't people do it now?
And why,
Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of a weak point.
Episode 1 and 2 were really excellent, high rated. I would give them good 9s out of 10. Mm-hmm. I like what they tried to do in episode 3, but it focused too much on the young people, and not enough time is spent from Dracula's point of view. Mm-hmm. The first 2 were Dracula's story, and the third seemed to drift away from that. I kept getting the feeling that we were supposed to care about Lucy, but before she died, she always just seemed like a shallow girl as obsessed with Instagram selfies. She's always taking pictures of herself. And, of course, the little hearts float out of that.
Well, and I think she was supposed to be some special person because she wasn't afraid of and that's why Dracula liked her, because she wasn't afraid of anything. And
not afraid of death.
But she was just bored and jaded and awful.
Yeah.
I mean, she didn't come across as a special person to me. She just came across as kind of awful and
spoiled, narcissistic.
Yeah.
Reality show type of person.
Yeah, who thinks she's seen and done everything, and there's nothing left to experience, and
she's like 19, maybe.
22.
Okay.
They mentioned.
Oh, they said that.
Yeah,
okay.
They did. Yeah.
Yeah, the heavy focus on Lucy detracts a bunch from the story. Part 3 should probably have been split into 2 more full parts. 1 part for the prison, 1 part for Lucy. As it was, the whole thing, the third part was just kind of a mess. I thought Lucy was boring. The prison could have been much more interesting. There could have been a lot more of the prison.
But if they had just an episode of Lucy, that might have been a real bomb.
They could have added detail and made it more interesting. As it was, no, it wasn't.
Yeah.
So you like it?
Yes.
Overall?
All in all, a big thumbs up.
Yeah, I would have to say so, too. It was much better than I was expecting, especially after reading some of the other reviews.
Yeah, people were harsh on this.
Yeah.
Unnecessarily harsh. In my opinion.
And that's our show.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. Stop in at horrorguys.com for weekly movie, sometimes more than weekly reviews. This upcoming week, what are we going to have Saturday? We're going to have
Night Monster.
Night Monster from Universal.
And The Evil of Frankenstein.
More Peter Cushing.
There's all kinds of words they use for Frankenstein. Evil of Frankenstein, blood of Frankenstein, curse. This time it's the evil of.
Of course, we're going to talk about Midsummer from last year and also Tetsuo the Iron Man.
I'm looking forward to seeing Midsummer. I've heard a lot about it.
We need to see that probably tonight.
Maybe.
After I get the Dracula episode online.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so we'll see you next week.
See ya.